Hey, what's up everybody? This is Osterberg501 and today I want to go over the blood system in the upcoming open world survival RPG game, V Rising. And this is going to be one of the main forms of progression in the game. And I have not played any of the beta tests for V Rising, so all of this information primarily comes from the dev blogs released over the past year. And I want to take you guys through the timeline of the released bits of information we have for the blood system in the game. And just a disclaimer, this information could have been changed by now and could potentially be changed for early access or potentially be changed after early access is released. And that's why I want to take you through all of the information we have about the system in order of when it was released. And the first time the blood system was talked about was pretty much right when the game was revealed. And the question was, how does blood work? So as all of you probably know, vampires need blood to survive, attack humans to drink their blood, or finish them off with a bite. Additionally, there will be different blood types, each with its own perks. To give you some quick examples, fresh warrior blood improves your physical damage, rogue blood improves movement speed, and scholar blood improves your magic damage. Certain blood gives advantages in combat situations, while worker blood could be the safe bet if you're out gathering resources. So at the most base version of this system, drinking blood of specific enemies gives you different buffs, and this can range from different types of damage buffs, resource gathering buffs from workers, and as we get further into the video, you see this is expanded on pretty heavily. Human blood will be the primary source of blood, but there will be emergency supplies in the form of rats and other snacks. Rat blood is not very tasty and has less value. Instead, the chef suggests fresh rogue blood, which will make you faster and stronger in combat, or some fine scholar blood to increase your magic damage. Certain blood types are best in combat situations, while others are a better option if you plan to gather resources. Once you get the hang of different blood types, there are more ways to optimize your perks since the blood quality of each human varies. Higher quality blood will additionally increase the number of perks. A fun challenge would be to find a human with the perfect blood and store him/her in your prison for future gourmet dinners with friends. So this is kind of elaborating on what we've already gone over a little bit, where you have your different types of blood to give different buffs, but then you have different qualities of blood that will give better and more perks past just getting a certain blood type. And also something mentioned here that we also went over in my last video that went over the base building system is that if you find a specific NPC or human with a really good blood type and really good blood quality, you could take this human and capture them in your base and then keep them alive, so you could keep drinking blood from them and keep getting that really good buff. And they also mentioned in the base building vlog that the better you treat these prisoners, the more you'll be able to drink from them and the more frequently. So you could potentially get a really good blood type, really good quality of blood, capture that human in your base, and then treat that prisoner really well and be able to very frequently drink blood from that human to get the buff more frequently. Vampire Society is an engine that runs on blood, and in the world of V Rising, this is perhaps more true than in many other vampire-themed games. Blood isn't just what the undead drink to sustain themselves, but like veins running through a body, blood pumps through every aspect of what makes an unholy empire run. As one might expect, blood is obtained from living beings that inhabit V Rising. And to get to that blood, players will have to strike out into the world and take it. In this game, you're a predator. The focus on harvesting prey to advance your abilities is essential to living that fantasy, and you'll find yourself cutting through endless enemies as you claw your way to the top. So this expands on the blood system a little more, but really doesn't explain it too much, kind of more of a tease that you will be learning different abilities from drinking the blood of different creatures. And it specifically mentions this as creatures instead of just humans. So this is the first tease we're getting of being able to drink the blood of creatures outside of humans and getting different abilities and other buffs from those creatures. Everything needs to feed to survive, and letting your blood stores fall too low will cause ill effects and eventually lead to death if allowed to go too long without filling these reserves. More than that though, is that there are different qualities of blood you're harvesting. In an earlier devlog, we mentioned that players could drink different types of blood for other benefits, and that's still true. One of our current designs has buffs ranging from increased physical damage to magic damage to even improvements to resource gathering. More than that, individual humans have higher or lower qualities of blood. So hypothetically, you can have two of the same unit, but one's blood provides a significantly more powerful buff than the other. And this is elaborating what I just went over, in that there are the different types of enemies you can drink their blood to get different types of buffs. But then within those different types of buffs, you can also have different quality of blood, which will give more of those buffs. And they teased earlier on that you could even get additional perks if it's a high enough quality of blood. Blood will also help develop abilities that you acquire out in the world. V Rising is not a game with levels, classes, or races like one might expect in an RPG format. Vampires are powerful creatures who grow stronger over time. Variety exists in the form of abilities that can be permanently unlocked, combined with the more temporary abilities afforded by gear. These permanent abilities are more in line with your vampire nature and need to be developed to their full potential. It should be relatively easy to acquire enough of these skills and abilities for a player to fill out their skill bar and be able to stand toe to toe with other vampires or enemies in the world. However, if you want the specific variety that appeals to you most, you'll have to do some hunting to acquire them. So what it's explaining here is that this is not a typical RPG in that there's levels or classes or races, but that a lot of the variety and build creation comes from learning new permanent abilities through this blood system and defeating and drinking blood from different creatures, and then combining that with temporary skills that are on gear pieces in the game, because there is going to be a full gearing system in the game like a lot of other RPGs have. And drinking blood of different creatures is going to permanently give you these additional skills and abilities, but they are also mentioning here that you have to keep developing these skills and hunt for the specific ones you want. And they have mentioned boss creatures and rare creatures being out in the world, so most likely different rare enemies or different boss enemies are going to have specific, much rarer, much harder to get abilities, and that pretty much all of the abilities in the game are going to have some amount of progression to them to keep making them stronger and stronger. When I said blood fuels everything, I meant it. A vampire's castle was built on a foundation of blood magic, and the most recent design of the castle has what we're calling a blood well, the living, beating heart of your territory. The blood well acts as a point to feed blood into, reinforcing the castle structure and preventing it from falling into disrepair. While the blood well is adequately fed and maintained, your crafting stations will not only operate more effectively, but the castle defenses will be significantly more challenging to assail from the outside. Its walls will be more difficult to harm and even regenerate their structure at a rate that makes it impossible to break in with claws or a simple weapon alone. As you maintain the blood well, breaking in will be nearly impossible without an impressive coordinated effort and significant dedicated resources. So this is something we heavily went over in my last video that goes over the base building and castle building in the game. And this is something that we know is pretty up to date because my last video was going over the newest blog that was released that was not too long ago at all. So the basis of this is when you build up your castle has a heart that also runs off of blood, and keeping this heart filled with blood will do a lot of things for your castle. It will repair all of its structures over time. It'll make everything about your castle much more sturdy, much harder to raid, much more tanky. All of your crafting stations will be more effective, and they elaborate on this in that most recent blog that they will automatically craft stuff you tell them to, so you don't have to craft an item and then sit there crafting it. You can tell this station to craft it and then go do other stuff while it crafts it. And this is all tied in with the blood system. So besides blood being something that your character needs to actually survive, and then you get a bunch of buffs and different abilities from drinking different blood, your castle also runs off of blood. Most likely your castle runs off of a more generic blood resource, but these systems are still pretty heavily tied together. And then there's also a pretty big advancement in the blood system, and that is V-Blood. V-Blood units are a cornerstone of the V Rising experience, truly terrifying specimens of both monsters and men that stalk the lands of Valderon. They are the apex predators of the wilderness. They are the stalwart champions who will try to stand against the vampiric tide and challenge our rule, the pillars of society, leaders, and symbols of strength that dominate the civilized world. Think of a vampire, the themes of hunger, the greedy pursuit of lifeblood, and prestige. It only seemed fitting for us to pair these concepts together to form the progression system for a bunch of antagonistic bloodsuckers. In our mythology, we thought it pertinent to draw on concepts like blood memory, the idea that our history centuries are written and contained within our very DNA. While humans and beasts may not understand these ideas, it is only natural that vampires be fully aware of the nature of blood and all the knowledge that can be gleaned from it. So this is more kind of background lore on what V blood actually is and why blood is so important to the general lore of V Rising. V blood units will be one primary avenue of progression and embody the glorious feeling of overcoming an obstacle and becoming that much greater for it. Defeating a powerful necromancer who possesses crippling, debilitating magic, and then take that magic for yourself. Conquer a mighty bear and devour her Urzine essence, drink deep of an impossibly gifted carpenter, and absorb the secrets of their craft. These encounters can happen all over the land of Vardaron. An expert artisan might be found in their forge, whiling away on their great works, or a military leader might be located in the heart of their stronghold. Players can track these units using a new castle feature we've introduced that we're calling the Blood Altar. This workstation lets you set goals for yourself, giving the player a measure of guidance and letting them pick what type of unit they want to pursue to advance the kind of progression they're interested at that time. Now, from everything I could gather, the V Blood system is how you go about getting the different abilities from the blood system. So it's seeming like all the other stuff we went over about drinking the blood of different humans for different buffs, being able to take those humans back to your castle and keep them to keep drinking their blood for those buffs and things of that nature are still in the blood system, but then the Blood Altar and V Blood are how you go about getting different abilities and increasing the power of those different abilities. And from what I've been able to put together, the Blood Altar essentially allows you to pick what type of progression you want to go for and will give you this blood trail to allow you to track down the certain bosses or rares or different strong creatures to go and get those specific abilities you're looking for. But also remember, that's much easier said than done because this is a big open world with tons of threats. You have to hunt at night because during the daytime you're going to get hit by the sun, and then a lot of people are going to be playing on PvP servers with open world PvP, so you could potentially be attacked by other players while hunting for whatever boss or enemy you want to go defeat for their ability. So this is a much more long-term progression system and a big portion of how you're going to build your character and increase your strength. We understand now that there is a fundamental difference between those that possess V-Blood and those that don't, but how is that represented in game? These creatures are extraordinary echoes of their peers. A mighty warrior might be unnaturally massive in stature, or a priest might literally glow with the holy magic they channel. A wolf alpha might become the embodiment of ferocity. When creating these units, it's crucial for us to represent how important they are in the world properly, both in terms of lore and mechanics. These foes are supposed to be a step above their common counterparts, and it's vital that they have both UI indicators like different colored names and unique designs that deliver on their magnificence. V-Blood empowers, and when you slay a unit with V-Blood and take their strength for your own, it should be after taking down a sufficiently badass looking enemy. So this is more explaining the UI design and the actual visual design of these V-Blood creatures. So if you see this priest walking around in a camp that's glowing with holy energy, that is a V-Blood enemy that you could go defeat and unlock this permanent ability. And this enemy might also have different UI indicators like a different colored nameplate, or maybe their actual design model would be completely different than all the other enemies around them. And the same for any other creatures, such as a alpha wolf. It may be a different designed model with maybe different effects on it. And I think the point of this is making sure you know that that is a V-Blood enemy and that enemy is not going to be easy to defeat, but if you do defeat it, it's going to give you a very worthwhile reward for doing that. So that is the majority of the information I could find on the blood system. And this is going to be a major form of progression in the game. Everything from the main resource that takes to sustain your character, which I think is going to be the replacement for eating and drinking from a lot of other survival games. So instead of that, blood will be the main resource you need to sustain yourself with. So if you're out of blood, you're going to start dying. But then past that, you can drink the blood of certain creatures to give yourself different buffs. Then you can get different blood qualities, which will give you greater buffs and potentially even give you additional perks on top of that. And then your castle is going to be pretty much completely run off of a more generic blood, because you have to keep the heart of your castle filled with blood to keep your base healed, keep it strong, and keep your crafting bench much is working. And then once you get to the V blood system, which seems to be the higher tier of progression for the blood system, you will be hunting down different V blood creatures, rare enemies, bosses, which when defeated will give you permanent ability unlocks that you will then have to keep progressing to make those abilities stronger and stronger. But that's pretty much all I want to go over for the blood system in V Rising. And just a reminder, V Rising will be releasing into early access on May 17th, and this will be through Steam's early access system. Don't know the price of it yet. We most likely won't know the price until it's released. Maybe they'll release a price like a week earlier, but if you want to get the game, you'll be able to buy it on May 17th on Steam. So subscribe if you want to see more V Rising or other videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about the blood system, and thanks for watching.